Hello and welcome to this video where I'll be talking you through some tips for the day of your TSA exam in order to succeed in the test. Tip number 1 is to take care of yourself on test day. You don't want to add to your stress by being tired or hungry before the exam, so make sure you get a good night's sleep the night before. Don't be tempted to stay up all night doing last minute preparation. Sleep is really important for you to be able to focus and perform at your best in the exam, and it's likely that any preparation you do the night before probably won't be very secure and won't help you as much as a good night's sleep will in terms of doing well, so making sure you sleep is really important. Secondly, you also want to make sure you've had a good breakfast before sitting the exam. You might not have much of an appetite if you're nervous, but it's important to fuel yourself for the test. You don't want to be distracted by being hungry. Tip number 2 is know your timings. 90 questions in 50 minutes for section 1 means you have 1.8 minutes per question. In practice, some questions won't take that long and others might require a bit more time, but keeping an eye on the clock is important to make sure you aren't spending too long on a single question. Sometimes, if you're running out of time, it's simply better to take an educated guess and move on. The same goes for section 2. Go into the exam with an idea of how much you can write in 30 minutes because you have not got long and you need to be prepared to finish your essay in that time. Don't be tempted to write loads for one paragraph if it means you won't have time to flesh out the others or finish your conclusion. You really want to make sure this essay is finished as it's being assessed on its structure, so being aware of your timings is really, really important. Tip number 3 is read the question. This might sound obvious, but in section 1, the question setters like to try and catch you out with subtle wording or irrelevant pieces of information that are going to trick you, and often some of the answers will be correct if you fall into one of these traps. So therefore, it's really important to read the question carefully and make sure you understand exactly what it is asking you before attempting to answer. Don't just skim it, as you may miss key details. For section 2, it's important to read the essay questions carefully before choosing and stay on topic. It's really important your essay answers the question that's being asked of you and not your interpretation or a slightly different question you wish they'd asked instead. So for both sections of the exam, reading the question and really understanding it is super important. Tip number 4 is to identify the question type in section 1. The questions in section 1 all fall into distinct categories. There's 3 types of problem-solving question and 7 types of critical thinking question, which we went through in more detail in the TSA section 1 video. Get familiar with these before the exam, and then on the day, try and identify which type of question each question falls into, because this is going to get you an idea of what kind of reasoning you're going to have to follow to get to the answer, and potentially what kind of traps you might be set to fall into. So for example, if you can identify that question is relevant selection, you're going to know to avoid using all of that information and be really judicious about which you choose to use to answer the question. Tip number 5 is sometimes it's okay to guess. This test is multiple choice and it isn't negatively marked, so you won't gain any marks from a wrong answer, but you won't lose any either. Therefore, it makes sense to guess if you're stuck. You might be able to rule out a few answers beforehand and then take a guess from what's left, but ultimately, whatever happens, it's better to make a thoughtful guess on a question than to leave it blank, or to spend 10 minutes getting to the right answer and run out of time for the others. Don't leave any question unanswered. If you're almost out of time or you just don't have a clue, just put your best guess, as the only way you definitely won't get a mark is if you leave it blank. Tip number 6 is to aim for full marks. There is probably information you can find about the average TSA converted score for offer holders for your course, but it's not the best idea to kind of try and tactically aim to just reach it. The TSA raw mark that converts to a particular score changes every year, depending on the difficulty of the test, so it's impossible to know exactly how many marks out of 50 you will need in any particular year. The only thing that's certain is that more marks is better, so aim for full marks is really the only thing you can aim for. It's unlikely you'll actually get 50 out of 50, and the test is designed that way, that aiming high is always the best idea, rather than trying from what you think is the bare minimum in order to get an interview for your course. Tip number 7, listen to the invigilators. They are in charge on the test day. You can't start until they say you can start, and you have to stop when they tell you to stop. Don't try and have a sneak peek at the questions before you're allowed to begin, or don't try and answer one last question or keep writing after they've told you time is up. They will notice because it's their job to notice, and you could potentially get disqualified from the exam, and as a result, your application will likely be automatically rejected. It's just not worth it. follow the rules of the exam, and do what the invigilators tell you. It's really, really important. Tip number 8 is to make notes if you need to. A lot of the problem-solving questions will require several steps that'll be hard to hold in your mind at once. So writing things down if you need to is a great idea, and you're allowed to do this on the question paper you'll be given. It's going to help you avoid mistakes. For section 2, it's a good idea to jot down a super quick plan, so your essay will have a logical structure, which is what the admissions tutors really want to see. You can also put time limits on your plan as well to help you finish the essay in the 30 minutes. And finally, tip number 9 is to use techniques to calm down if you're panicking during the test. You might be really nervous, and that's totally normal. It's a big exam, but it's important to know how to calm yourself down if you feel these nerves getting the better of you during the exam. For example, you could try taking some deep breaths. Breathe in for 4 counts and out for 8 counts. This kind of breathing will make you start to feel calmer. It's also important not to let those panic thoughts of "I can't do this" win. You're prepared and you can do it. Just take a quick second to remind yourself of this and really get that confidence back. And that'll help you be calmer in the exam and do better as a result. So that was our tips on how to do as well as you can on the day of your TSA exam. Thank you for watching.